that brings us to this video. Hello guys, welcome back again. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're gonna be checking a video who is trying to hit the wrong B-2 tilt bomber. Okay, that was a very bad move, I must say. It was a wrong one at that. In my previous video about the US military power, I didn't get to see this. Like, I didn't see it stated anywhere in that video. So that brought me to this, and I really want to check it out with you guys, okay? So this happened a couple of weeks ago. That was last month that this incident took place. So let me know more about this in the comments, and let me know your thoughts about this. Write down the comment, all right? If you're new here, I am Lauren. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share, subscribe so you don't miss out on my videos. Let's get into it.
April 17th, 2025, Western Yemen. A heat signature
Yeah,
appeared on a
I
Houthi
love
radar
it.
console. Fast,
Western Yemen.
high, and silent. Operators assumed it was a drone, a routine intercept. They armed a pair of Syad
Yeah.
missiles, locked on, and launched.
They thought
But what
totally
they locked
wrong.
onto that night wasn't a drone. It was a B-2 Spirit, the U.S. Air Force's invisible sword.
B-2
A
Spirit.
flying wing of radar
I love
reflective
that name.
angles, near undetectable to even the most advanced tracking system.
Yeah.
You don't see a B-2 bomber unless it wants to be seen. That night, it didn't.
No way.
The missiles burned into the sky, but the B-2 was gone before the war.
Okay, guys, I gotta chip in here. I totally love his narrative skills. He is so good at it. I love it. This is great. Great art of
Warheads ever reached
storytelling,
altitude.
actually.
Not shot down, not hit, simply gone. And while the Houthis were scrambling to make sense of what just happened,
Yeah.
the Spirit kept moving, smooth, silent, and already feeding its live reconnaissance data to the Diego.
Couldn't that have hinted them that this could be the spirit in the air? Like, couldn't it have hinted them, as the forces in the military forces, I actually expected them to have noted that the only way they could see something in the air and not see it again must have been the spirit on the move, something like that. Well, maybe they didn't.
Garcia, halfway across the Indian Ocean. What the B-2 saw that night and what it shared would spark a retaliation the world wasn't ready for. This wasn't a standard strike package. This was not a drone swarming Ras Isa or a destroyer launching warning shots. This was the trigger moment that led to what we now know as one of the most surgical, strategic, and devastating airstrikes in recent U.S. military history. And yes, if you've seen our breakdowns of the Ras Isa bombing, you've seen the result. But this is the beginning. The moment the Houthis made the biggest mistake possible,
Yeah.
they fired on the wrong aircraft. And the response wasn't just precise, it was personal. The moment the Syad missiles left their launch rails, the Houthi operators were already behind the curve. They'd tracked the heat, locked in a trajectory, and assumed they were targeting a US MQ-9 Reaper drone, a common sight above Yemen's coastline. What they didn't know was that this wasn't an unmanned
Wrong.
platform casually sweeping for radar spikes. This was a stealth bomber on an
No
active
way.
mission, and it was watching them back. Flying at high altitude, cloaked in radar-absorbent
bomber.
materials and shaped to deflect electromagnetic waves, the B-2 Spirit had passed into the Red Sea airspace under complete silence. Its radar cross-section, smaller than that of a bird, made it almost invisible to conventional detection systems. It wasn't just avoiding detection, it was built to be forgotten. But somehow, something had pinged. A brief radar pulse. Whatever it was, it gave the Houthis a chance to take a shot. And they took it. From a hidden SAM site dug into a rocky hillside around Al Hudaydah, 2 surface-to-air missiles streaked into the night. The B-2's onboard threat receivers chirped, barely. The pilot, already mid-mission, executed a defensive maneuver and deployed countermeasures. The bomber didn't need to dive or race away. It simply let its stealth do what it was designed to do, disappear. The missiles lost their lock. No detonation, No contact, nothing. But the sensors on board the B-2 recorded everything.
Just
Launch vectors, IR signatures, missile trajectories, and most importantly, the precise coordinates of the launch site. Back at Diego Garcia, the information fed directly into a live mission channel.
That was a very wrong move.
Within seconds, analysts flagged the origin point, mapped the surrounding terrain, and identified thermal signatures of additional equipment nearby. What the bomber had just picked up wasn't an isolated threat, it was part of a mobile launch network. While the Houthis scrambled to reposition, the U.S. Air Force had already built a full telemetry profile of the site. And here's where things shifted. Normally, an aircraft, even one as advanced as a B-2, would complete its mission, upload data post-flight, and let ground command sort out the next steps. But this night was different. The Spirit wasn't just on a recon pass. It was fully armed, loaded with GBU-57s, massive ordnance penetrators, and a suite of JDAMs optimized for hardened underground targets. Command didn't need hours to make a decision, they already had one. The attack on the B-2 was considered a direct act of aggression. The order? Immediate retaliation.
Wow.
And retaliation from a B-2 doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't involve warnings or build-up.
No way.
It doesn't light up the sky with tracers. It comes in silence, with precision, and with total surprise. At high altitude, masked by clouds and curvature, the B-2 adjusted course. A new strike profile was uploaded from command. The aircraft banked south, just by a few degrees. But that small correction was enough to put its payload within the perfect striking range of the Houthi site. While the rebels on the ground were still scanning the horizon for visual confirmation of a kill, the Spirit locked in GPS coordinates and prepared to drop. The first pair of JDAMs released without a sound. They fell with gravity, corrected mid-flight, and struck within 1 meter of their target, an equipment hub nestled behind a camouflaged bunker.
Wow.
The detonation was immediate. Secondary explosions lit up the hillside. What had once been a launch point was now a crater. But it didn't end there. 2 more bombs followed, targeting what intelligence had flagged as a hardened underground shelter, likely housing command staff or munitions. The 5,000-pound penetrators did their job. From the moment the Houthis fired to the final explosion, less than 15 minutes had passed. 15 minutes from confident launch to absolute destruction. And the B-2? It was already gone. Climbing westward. Invisible, untouchable,
Disappeared.
mission complete.
That's the Spirit.
The B-2's presence over Yemen wasn't for show.
It
was sent for deep strike capability. The kind needed when surface-level bombing wouldn't cut it. This isn't a frontline aircraft. It's a strategic lever. And once it moves, you know something big is coming. And yet, even in 2025, it still shocks adversaries. Because even after decades of upgrades, countermeasures, and radar evolution, the Spirit still operates like a ghost.
Look at it.
It's still the plane that the
Standing
entire
giant.
air defense networks failed to track. Which made the Houthis' decision to fire on it not just dangerous, but reckless. They didn't know what they were aiming at. They didn't know what they were provoking.
Reckless.
And they certainly didn't know that their failed strike would trigger a data stream so accurate it would allow U.S. forces to launch follow-up missions with pinpoint accuracy. Because the B-2 didn't just drop bombs that night, it painted the battlefield. It marked supply depots, mapped transmission hubs, captured thermal imagery, and fed it live to joint operations centers. It gave the U.S. analysts a real-time view into the pulse of Houthi operations, and it did it all while staying invisible. Hornets carrying GBU-38 JDAMs and AGM-88 HARMs screaming towards the Yemeni coastline. This was no drawn-out campaign. This was a 6-minute storm. The first targets were exactly where the B-2 said they'd be. The same SAM battery that launched those 2 Syad missiles. Precision bombs dropped from near stratospheric altitude, punching through layers of camouflage and concrete. The site erupted in fire and debris. A secondary explosion confirmed munitions had been hidden beneath. But the bombers didn't stop there. 2 kilometers south, a buried communications node came next. It had been silent for weeks, until the moment the B-2 lit it up. One bunker buster erased it from the map. Meanwhile, as the bombers carved into the hard targets, the Truman strike fighters hit Ras Issa. It wasn't just a port, it was a strategic artery. Fuel, money, mobility. The Houthis had assumed that the US wouldn't touch it. Too civilian, too high risk. They were wrong. At 0117 local time, the first Super Hornets flew low over the Red Sea, their radar signatures masked by Growler jamming. They released a surgical load of JDAMs onto fuel tank clusters and underground tunnels. In under 30 seconds, multiple secondary blasts tore through the northern sector of the terminal. Thermal imagery showed hot zones igniting in sequence, a textbook chain reaction. By the time the second wave arrived, the terminal looked like a smoldering canyon of flame. But it didn't end there. Offshore, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer opened its VLS cells. 2 Tomahawk
Like, it still didn't end there. Wow. No.
cruise missiles shot skyward and arced low over the sea. Their destination? Ras Issa's southern perimeter, where intel suggested a weapons transfer was underway inside a warehouse, camouflaged as an oil storage depot. One missile struck the building directly. The other buried itself in a suspected tunnel entrance, collapsing the rock face above it. Total strike time? Just under 6 minutes. Total targets hit? 17. And the Houthis? Scrambling. Radios went silent mid-transmission. Radar sites powered down. Infrared imaging showed vehicles fleeing inland, many without lights. Some of their doors still open. No signs of coordinated response. No retaliation. Inside the Pentagon, mission logs came back. No collateral damage outside of the designated kill box. No U.S. casualties. All primary objectives neutralized. And yet, it wasn't the destruction that made the mission historic. It was what triggered it. Because a single mistake, firing at what they thought was just a slow-moving drone, had summoned the full fury of American stealth aviation, carrier-based firepower, and precision warfare doctrine, not as revenge, but as policy. This wasn't about killing a launch site. It was about reminding everyone watching, from Iran to Moscow, that the U.S. doesn't need to be provoked twice. The message was loud, clear, and delivered with steel. And for the Houthis, it came with a brutal realization. They didn't just fire on a bomber.
Message.
They opened the door to something they couldn't contain. By sunrise, the smoke from Ras Issa was visible from space. Infrared satellites pulsed with heat signatures of what had once been a fuel terminal. Now it was a scar, blackened, broken, and still smoldering along the Red Sea coast. Inside Houthi territory, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The moment Package Alpha ended, local radio traffic dropped to near zero. What little chatter remained was panicked, fragmented. Some units reported losing contact with Central Command. Others never checked in again. Ground sensors picked up scattered figures fleeing on foot, abandoning convoys. But there was no public statement, no official declaration of retaliation, only silence and smoke.
Silence and smoke.
The Houthis knew what had happened.
Silence.
They'd just
Only silence and smoke. What would they say? That was reckless, like totally reckless. Papa. No.
Estimated how fast the U.S. would respond and how deeply it could strike without warning. For years, Ras Issa had stood as a strategic blind spot. Even during the height of the Saudi-led airstrikes, the terminal was left untouched. The decision to hit Ras Issa wasn't random. It wasn't just about fuel or revenge. It was about leverage. The terminal didn't just store oil. It powered logistics, funded drone production, and served as a nexus for encrypted communications across western Yemen.
Look at that kind of loss.
U.S. intelligence had tracked its rise for months, building a case for its role not as infrastructure, but as a military node. The moment a B-2 came under fire, that designation changed from theory to target, and so did the rules. Within 24 hours of the strike, oil markets shifted. Defense analysts across the globe scrambled to interpret what had just happened. Had the U.S. crossed a red line, or had the Houthis forced Washington's hand? On encrypted channels, internal Houthi messages reflected something deeper than panic. They showed confusion, repeated queries about lost radar systems, inquiries about jammed GPS signals, rumors of a cyber attack, officers demanding answers from headquarters that no longer existed. What they didn't realize was that the B-2's data package hadn't just enabled a retaliatory strike, it had collapsed an entire communication framework. Key relays were gone, command nodes severed, mobile launch units fried before they could be relocated. It wasn't just fuel that burned at Ras Issa, it was tempo, rhythm, the sense that they were in control.
Okay, look at it.
And while the world waited for the U.S. to issue a statement, none came.
You're silent.
No press conference, no chest-pounding
You're
announcement,
silent.
just footage.
Footages, that's
Satellite
all.
images of scorched
Nothing
earth,
more.
heat maps, before and after.
I mean, there was no need to talk. As in the victory would talk by itself. As in, why would they need to talk? No need. Just silence. This is great.
Comparisons, and one
Great,
simple
perfect
truth.
way of correction. Touch
Something
me by
had
mistake and
changed.
die by correction.
For the Houthis, the idea that their SAM systems could fire with impunity was gone. For their backers, the message was even sharper. Hide your operations behind civilian assets, and those assets become fair game. This wasn't just a
The
response
best
to
retaliation
provocation,
I've seen
it was a
in
shift
how many
in
years? I
doctrine.
think ever since I was
A
born.
new phase in the conflict, where stealth bombers no longer hover on standby, they
Best
hunt.
comeback.
Where ports that double as war chests become targets. Where 6 minutes of silence from a radar screen might mean the next strike is already inbound. The impact of April 17th didn't end with the craters it left behind. It reshaped the entire game board. And the next move? It wasn't the Houthis to make anymore. In military terms, the April 17th strike was textbook. Precise, clean, decisive. But what set it apart wasn't just the execution. It was the message it sent. Not just to the Houthis, but to every actor watching the region with their finger on a trigger. Until that moment, U.S. posture in the Red Sea had been largely defensive. Drones patrolled, destroyers shadowed shipping lanes. Threats were monitored, documented, and occasionally answered with lightly controlled responses. The rules of engagement were cautious, measured.
Perfection.
That posture is
Pure
what
one.
made the Ras Issa strike so disruptive. Because this time, the U.S. didn't just respond to provocation, it flipped the script. Deploying a B-2 bomber, the crown jewel of American stealth capability, wasn't just about hitting hard. It was about signaling intent. The kind of
Pass
intent
the
that
message.
says, we're no longer playing
Pass
by the tempo
message.
you
As
set.
in, you go loud, wait.
The Houthis, and more importantly their supporters in Tehran, Damascus, and elsewhere, had grown comfortable with operating in the gray zone, launching drones from civilian areas, hiding weapons in infrastructure, embedding command posts beneath oil facilities. These tactics relied on one assumption, that the U.S. wouldn't risk the blowback of hitting economic or civilian adjacent targets. But with one mission, that assumption died.
Corrected.
Ras Issa
Clearly.
wasn't just destroyed, it was redefined.
Very loud.
No
message.
longer just a port, it was now a valid military target. And with that reclassification came a new doctrine. If it supports the war machine, it's on the board. For Washington, this wasn't escalation, it was clarification.
Yeah.
The strike told allies, adversaries, and undecideds alike, stealth bombers are no longer reserved for wars on paper. They're active, they're watching, and if provoked, they're authorized to engage. Not in days or hours, but
Yeah,
in minutes. The battlefield didn't just shift geographically, it shifted psychologically. And that's the real win. Because wars aren't just fought with missiles and bombs.
No.
They're fought with confidence, with tempo, with control over who moves next.
Back to back.
And after April 17th, The next move belongs to the one watching from above,
Everything,
silent,
like
invisible,
everything.
and already halfway home. The sky over Yemen is quiet again, but it's not peace, it's
Very
pause.
Clean.
After the smoke
And
cleared
loud.
from Ras Issa and the signals went dark, something fundamental had shifted. Not just in terrain or tactics, but in tone. The United States had made it clear. The rules are different now. You don't get to fire on a B-2 and walk away. You don't get to hide behind infrastructure and assume it's off limits. If you touch American assets, we don't wait, we answer. That single failed missile launch, it didn't just miss its mark, it changed the equation. What began as a stealth bomber flying a deep recon mission ended in a 6-minute display of modern, raw warfare, fueled by data, precision, and a doctrine that's no longer reactive, it's preemptive, calculated, relentless. And now, every radar system that pings too long, every convoy that strays too far, every antenna that rises where it shouldn't, those things come with a new level of risk. Not just of being watched, but of being wiped out before anyone even knows what hit them. That's the legacy of April 17. And
April
that's why
17.
this story mattered. Let us know in the comments, what do you think was the real turning point? Was it the failed Houthi launch? The US choice to strike Ras Issa? Or the simple fact that the B-2 showed up at all? And hey, if you want to go one step further and support the channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and help us bring more real naval stories to the surface. Click join on our channel page and step aboard. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe. And remember, sometimes the war you don't see is the one that rewrites the rules.
Definitely. Sometimes the war you don't see is the one that rewrites the whole roles, the whole story. Wow. I mean, this was sharp, loud. What really stood out for me, what I feel is the game changer is the is the response, like the response time. They didn't have to like start thinking or calculating. Like it was there back to back. The decisions were already made before the incident even before the incident even took place. Like they had already decided before the incident even took place. So this is what I call touch me by mistake and you die by correction. Those are kind of mistake in this modern day, as in they just change it, it's a game changer. Like it just changed everything. Wow, this is, guys, I'm really loving this. This is great. Like I know I shouldn't be rejoicing over it, but who does that? Like what can you classify this as, a mistake or what? What do you classify that? Oh, no, 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 no. Touch me by mistake and you die by correction. Simple, quiet, yet so loud. As in they didn't have to make a statement about it. The victory to speak for itself. Hmm? Shaking out, silent but loud. Silently loud, like the volume is the highest. Please let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments, and keep your recommendations posted. I really appreciate that too. I'll see you again in the next video. I remain your girl, Lauren. Bye.